Welcome back, everyone. Marvel just released a first look at Namor in Black Panther 2, so we'll break it all down. We got a reference to him during Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, so I'll explain that too. The writer of Doctor Strange 2 explained why they didn't use Namor in the movie, and it has a lot to do with what's happening in Black Panther 2. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We'll be getting a Black Panther 2 trailer really soon too. You may have seen people posting about Namor in all your feeds this morning. Artwork of him came from the movie. Marvel has also talked about the different backstory they've created for the character so that he won't feel like Marvel's version of Aquaman. Just because so much of Aquaman's backstory is similar to Namor's backstory, even though if you actually read the comics, Namor is quite different. This is a blurry potato version of what Namor is going to look like. It just says his uniform is going to be inspired by the traditional look. He does kind of look like classic Namor with the original costume. They're just updating it a little bit with modern-looking technology that's supposed to be advanced the same way that Black Panther and the people of Wakanda use really advanced technology because of the way they evolved in secrecy. So what Marvel has done is they've just tuned his backstory a little bit with a couple of changes to make him fit with what they've explained in the ancient history of the MCU, and it actually ties way back to the Eternals movie as well. That's right, some of the stuff they did in the Eternals movie helped set up what's going on with modern-day Namor in the MCU. There's also a lot going on with the MCU gods during the movie that will tie in with what happened during Moon Knight and during Thor: Love and Thunder.
You'd be surprised how many intersectional planes of untethered consciousness exist. Like the ancestral plane. Oh, just gorgeous.
We literally just saw the humanoid form of Boss, the Panther goddess, in Thor: Love and Thunder. I'll post a link to that video in the description below. There's another trailer coming out too that we'll probably see her in. In the MCU, Namor and his people will be worshipping the Jaguar god, so it'll be a relatively similar backstory with the way that Wakandans and Black Panther worship the Panther goddess. These are the details that they released about his new backstory. The character will not originate in Atlantis, as in the comics, but in the Central American region and will come from a historic and submerged city of Mexican culture, Tenochtitlan. So you get what they're saying. They're not saying that the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan was Atlantis. They're just saying that Namor's people came from a group of those people. All of you just watched Doctor Strange 2 with Scarlet Witch versus the Illuminati. There were a ton of cameos. It was great. I've done a bunch of videos for it, so I'll post all those in the links below. But a lot of you were also like, why wasn't Namor part of the Illuminati? He was one of the core members of the team in the comics. It would have seemed like a good opportunity to introduce the character. Well, the writer of the movie said that they weren't allowed to use Namor. Like, specifically, he talked about using him, and Kevin Feige was like, no, we're using him in Black Panther 2. They also explain his path to the throne of Atlantis, so to speak, whatever they're going to call Atlantis in the MCU, is similar to Black Panther's path in the MCU. They're trying to create some similarities between their characters, so when the movie picks up, it sounds like Namor will have been the prince of his city, like his parents will still be alive, the king and queen. The same way that when Captain America Civil War picked up, Black Panther's father, T'Chaka, was still alive, but he had already become Black Panther and gotten his powers. It sounds like something is going to happen and eventually he will be forced to take the throne, and that'll be involved in the big beef in the MCU between their characters. Like, remember what happened with Black Panther during Captain America Civil War when he became king after his father had been assassinated? So they're trying to give reasons why Namor would be such an asshole inside the MCU and why he would go after Black Panther. They said Namor will be an important part of the film and will ask Wakanda for help to keep his people hidden from humans as the world starts to learn about the existence of his version of Atlantis because of a new technology created by Riri Williams, Ironheart, while she's still in school at MIT. So that also explains why Riri Williams is in this film to begin with, because in the comics, she doesn't really have anything to do with Wakanda. They are doing an Ironheart series and an Iron Man Armor Wars series. It also sounds like while she's tinkering with creating this new version of armor that they'll eventually debut in the Ironheart series, some part of that new technology accidentally reveals the existence of Atlantis. It sounds like it'll be one of those accidental things at the start that'll spin up into chaos and cause full-blown war between their peoples. It's kind of the way that Baron Zemo tried to manipulate events to push the Avengers to eventually break apart. Like, Winter Soldier had done a lot of bad things. They weren't lying about that. He was an actual criminal. But Baron Zemo tried to play on those circumstances to push the Avengers to fight with each other eventually and cause this giant war. It sounds like it'll be a similar situation during Black Panther 2. Even though it sounds like Namor's just trying to protect his people and wants to go to Black Panther for help, and they don't really want to get involved with that. And that leads them to go to war with each other eventually, as Namor's trying to protect his people, or thinks that he's protecting his people. It sounds like neither one of those groups will be responsible for starting things. Like, somebody behind the scenes will try to spin things up into a greater chaos.
Get a reading on those tremors?
It was a mild subduction under the African plate.
Do we have a visual? How are we handling it?
Net. It's an earthquake under the ocean. We handle it by not handling it.
I know everybody would love to see a version of Doctor Doom debut in the MCU, but just it seems like there's too much going on in this film for them to introduce Doctor Doom on top of all this. It does say, though, that during the movie, they will debut Wakanda's Navy for the first time. Like, they have an actual naval force that's more capable of fighting underwater. Some of those ships that they already used during the movie are more suited for atmospheric flight, but they can be modified for deep space flight, as confirmed during the What If series. But there's a whole lot to unpack here. First thing, mutants. Namor is called the first mutant in the comics because he was the actual first character literally in Marvel Comics they debuted as a mutant. That was in 1939. Apocalypse, Selene, who are also mutants that debuted earlier in the timeline in the context of the universe, weren't actually created in real life till much later. If you're going by actual debut, though, technically Scarlet Witch would be one of our first mutants in the MCU. Like, she and Quicksilver were already canonized as mutants. Billy and Tommy are also mutants in the MCU. And now after Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, it seems like Marvel is really just using the multiverse to introduce most of the mutants to the MCU from the legacy Fox X-Men universe.
You thought I was asleep, didn't you? Acting.
But we'll probably see mutants show up from a couple different sources, like some will show up in-universe because of events that have happened, and some of them will come from the multiverse. It sounds like he's going to be close to Black Panther's age, to T'Challa's age, and he'll have similar circumstances that T'Challa had when he took the throne eventually. He was forced to lead his people after his father had been assassinated. It sounds like something might happen to Namor's parents during this film too. The whole subplot tying them to the Eternals movie is them coming from the Central American Aztec Mexican culture in Tenochtitlan. So some of their backstory is trying to play on real-world mythology about what actually happened to the Aztec culture because they were this highly advanced people in real life. The way they set up the Atlanteans during the Eternals movie is that basically Namor's people come from the same group of Aztecs who eventually left this city when it fell to ruin. They have this advanced culture, the Eternals are living amongst them, everything seems like it's fine. They're meant to be advanced kind of like the Wakandans are during this period in history. Later in the timeline, the Spanish conquistadors start invading, killing them off. This is what causes the Eternals to break up the first time because they want to help them, but Ajax is still towing the line for Arishan the Judge, the other Celestials, trying to help Tiamat grow faster, get to the emergence faster. So Druig leaves with a small group of the Aztecs, not all the ones that survive, but some of them. They form a community deep in the rainforest that Druig uses his powers to keep hidden from the rest of the world for a couple thousand years until present day. Those are not meant to be the Atlanteans. The group of Aztecs that Namor would have come from in the MCU, it sounds like they were part of that original group that left the city but was separate from Druig. Like, as the conquistadors started invading, a completely different group of them broke off and created Atlantis and then just rose up in hiding. The same with Wakanda rose up and their technology evolved without having to worry about wars with other cultures. But now you see the similarity between Namor's people and Black Panther's people. Like, during the Black Panther backstory in the MCU, knowledge of Wakanda, their way of life, had been threatened by the rest of the world until Black Panther stepped in and eventually found some sort of compromise. The only difference in the comics is that Namor is a way bigger asshole than Black Panther. The whole thing with Namor and his people worshipping the Jaguar god also dovetails with this MCU backstory we saw in Moon Knight and now in Thor Love and Thunder with all the gods. Like, this is Boss, the Panther goddess, or at least her humanoid form. Most of the time in the comics, the way they depict her is like this humanoid-looking panther, the way that you see the hippo goddess walking around like a hippo on two legs.
Oh gosh, this will really bake your noodle, but I think you were just taking a little time out. I'm afraid you are actually quite dead.
The whole thing with Black Panther, his powers, and the Panther goddess is that he has a contract with her, but he's not meant to be her avatar the same way that Moon Knight is the avatar of Khonshu. Like, Moon Knight is kind of the slave of Khonshu. Black Panther forms more of a regular contract with Boss, the Panther goddess. She's more of a benevolent god, but she doesn't step in to help them with every single little thing. She usually just leaves them to their own devices. It sounds like Namor is going to have the same type of relationship with the Jaguar god. So that would explain how he's able to go toe-to-toe with Black Panther and why he potentially might wind up killing him, because they do have to explain Chadwick Boseman's passing. They did say that they would address that during the movie. I know there's a lot of questions about what's going on with the next version of Black Panther because the mantle will eventually be passed. There's a version of Shuri who becomes Black Panther in the comics. There's also rumors about M'Baku in the MCU becoming the next Black Panther. So when we get some more details about how all this is connected, of course I'll do a video. And my brand new Thor Love and Thunder trailer video will post next, so make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel so you don't miss that. Everyone click here for that Thor Love and Thunder trailer video. I'll update the link as soon as I post it. And click here for my new Fantastic Four video about how Reed Richards knew about Kang the Conqueror in the MCU. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.